Hello all, I am Guna Mathivanan. Welcome back to Simply Current Affairs. In today's Current Affairs Hitlist, we are going to discuss about economic survey. In the previous videos, you would have noticed I was discussing about the economic survey basics. Okay, please watch if you haven't watched. Similarly, I did budget basics also. Please revise those topics as well. That will be very effective. Both the basics will be very effective to understand the economic survey discussion. So in economic survey, we will be having 16 chapters. The 25-26 economic survey contains 16 chapters. In each video, I will be discussing a minimum of 2 to maximum of 3 chapters so that we can finish the economic survey in this week. Right. So before going into the economic survey discussion, friends, if you are looking for some revision support for economy, environment and geography, we have quick revision program where all these subjects will be covered in 15 hours. Each subject will be covered in 15 hours. For economy and environment, we'll be giving you detailed notes. For geography, it is about NCERT. So you have to revise the NCERT content as the classes are being discussed. For more information about this QRP program, you can visit our website www.simplycurrentaffairs.com. In the home page, you have courses section where we have information about QRP as well as other initiatives. Right. So economic survey, it is an annual publication prepared by Department of Economic Affairs under the guidance of Chief Economic Advisor. This economic survey was released since 1950-51. Till 1964, the economic survey was presented along with the union budget, but later it was separated. So economic survey will be presented a day before the presentation of budget. So as I said, there are 16 chapters in the economic survey. We are going to discuss the first two chapters in the today's session. Chapter 1, so state of economy pushing the growth frontier. So in this chapter, economic survey highlights that the global activity in the year 2025-2026, it remained stable, relatively stable. There was no COVID, there was no big Russia-Ukraine war. So the year when compared to the previous year, 25-26 was stable. However, there were geopolitical tensions. So what happened? Many developed countries, influential countries, they were using their economic tools to dictate the terms and to achieve their strategic interest. See what America is doing. They are imposing heavier taxes on China, India. They are imposing sanctions on, economic sanctions on Russia. By using these economic tools, they are trying to dictate. They are forcing India, they are forcing other countries to listen to their interest. This is called as economic statecraft. This is not new, but in the year 25-26, we saw a resurgence of this economic statecraft. It is a deliberate use of economic means to achieve strategic ends, has witnessed a rapid resurgence. Now, because of that, there was geopolitical tensions. To counter that, if you take China, they were disrupting the supply chains. They were disrupting the availability of raw materials. Trade was getting affected. So, increased use of economic policy as a strategic tool that was witnessed in 25-26. What is the consequence? The global FDI, so UNCTAD, has clearly mentioned in the remote that the global FDI has declined by almost 11% in the year 2024. Okay, so there is a structural shift which is happening because of these kind of geopolitical tensions. But despite of all this global uncertainty, if you look at India's growth, it is much positive. We are achieving a growth of more than 7%. We are the fastest growing economy in the world. Right. So here the survey is giving you the sector-wise contributions, both the demand side as well as the production side, supply side. So if you look at the gross value addition, GVA. So industries, we discussed about GVA, we discussed about the expenditure method, everything. Please go and watch those videos if you haven't watched it. So the GVA at basic prices. So financial year 26, the advanced estimate says that we will be growing at 7.3%. If you take agriculture sector, it is growing at 3.1%, industry 6.2%, services 9.1%. So the main driver of our economy here in the supply side is service sector. If you look at the demand side, that is the expenditure side, India is a consumption driven economy. We consume, that is creating demand, that demand results in more production, and that production results in growth. So we create demand through consumption. The private final consumption expenditure, it is growing at 7%. Look at the investment, gross fixed capital formation, which is growing at 7.8%. Government final consumption expenditure 5.2%. Our exports are also growing at 6.4%. So GDP from the demand side perspective also, we are able to see a growth of 7.4%. If you look at the sector-wise contribution, so in the total GDP, the agriculture, livestock, their sectoral contribution is 15.2%, industry is 24.3%, services is 51.1%. If you look at the demand side, of all the demand which we create, the maximum demand is created by the private final consumption expenditure. Almost 60+% of the demand is coming from the private final consumption expenditure. The next highest will be investments, gross fixed capital formation, the share is 30%. The next is exports. Export sectoral share is 21.5%. Then comes the GFCE, which is 9.9%. Okay, so these numbers you need not mug up. But just know which sector is contributing the most. Okay, so the primary driver, as I was mentioning, it is the PFCE. Of all the demand, more than 60% of the demand is coming from the private final consumption expenditure. What does it mean? You and me, we go to shop, we consume, we buy biryani, we buy computers, we buy automobiles, we buy cell phones. We consume, and that is creating demand, that is creating production, and that is creating the GDP as well as its growth. So PFCE contribution is almost 61.5%. The next comes the fixed capital formation, it is almost 30%. Then is the export, external demand, almost 21.6%. All the graphs here, they depict these informations only. So the private final consumption expenditure, that is growing at 7.5%. So if you look at the contribution of the private final consumption expenditure in the GDP, that is almost 60.7%. Gross fixed capital formation growth is almost 7.6%. Its contribution is almost 30%. Export growth is almost 5. I mean, if you take the first half of 2026 and the entire 2025, we are able to see on an average 4 to 5% of export growth we are able to see. The exports contribution in GDP is almost 21.2%. Okay, again I repeat, these numbers you need not memorize, just know the trend, whether the contribution is increasing or decreasing. Okay, so with respect to the sectors, agriculture sector, if you take, see, look at this, agriculture, this blue color is agriculture and allied sectors all put together. Agriculture and allied, livestock, horticulture, everything, okay, allied activities put together, we are able to see a growth somewhere between 3 to 4% in the previous years. In the financial year 2026, based on the first half information, it is said that almost 3.6% is the share. If you take financial year 25, if you combine both, again you will be getting a growth of almost 4%. Okay, but the interesting point, look at this graph. Whatever growth we have achieved, the growth is not purely because of the crop. So here this blue color that refers to the contribution of crops only. The contribution of crops, it grows, increases, it falls back, it increases, it falls back, it increases, it falls back. It is highly volatile. But if you look at the livestock, that is the allied activities, where we are able to see a relatively consistent performance. So if you take agriculture as a whole, you have to add everything. Agriculture as a whole, you have to add everything. When you add everything, we are able to achieve relatively stable around 4% growth rate. Okay, so we are getting a growth of almost 4.5%. Manufacturing, we are able to see a contribution in the GDP. The contribution is almost 17 to 18%. The contribution is almost 17 to 18%. Service sector. So before the pandemic, the service sector was growing at 7.9%, but now estimation says will be growing at 9.1%. So the main driver among the three is the service sector. When it comes to inflation, so look at the graph here. Inflation, headline means you will take into account of everything, food, fuel, everything you will take. So the headline inflation, so when you compare the previous years, in the financial year 26, the inflation is almost 1.7%. Headline CPI is 1.7%. Consumer price food index. So if you measure the inflation only among the food, we are able to see in the year 26, we are able to see a negative fall. That is a deflationary situation. The food prices is deflating. So if you remove this food and fuel, if you remove this food items, particularly food items, if you remove the food items, you will get core inflation. What is core inflation? Calculating inflation excluding food and fuel. Excluding food and fuel. When I exclude the food is what is the factor which is reducing the prices, because food items, we are experiencing a deflationary situation. We are experiencing a negative price, deflation situation. So look at the core inflation. Core inflation is calculated without taking into account of food and fuel. When I remove the food and fuel, look at the inflation. Inflation is averaging to almost 4.3%. So when you add food items, then it is getting reduced to 1.7%. When you add the food items, it comes down to 1.7%, because if you take the food items alone, we are experiencing deflation, price fall. Okay. So here core inflation excluding metals. Even this 4.3, that is because of gold and silver prices. Gold, silver prices increased. Because of that only we are seeing some 4.3% inflation. If you remove the metals, gold, silver, if you remove it, then you remove the food items. You remove the gold and silver. Then our inflation is getting average to 2.9%. Okay. With respect to fiscal policy, our capital expenditure and effective capital expenditure both have increased significantly. Okay, the fiscal deficit target is on track. So the target is by financial year 26, we have to achieve 4.4% of GDP, which we are achieving. So that is on track. With respect to the rate cut, so almost since February 2025, the central bank has reduced the repo rate by 1.25%. We all know 100 basis points means 1%, 125 basis points means 1.25%, and also the NPA also, it declined. It came to almost 2.2%. When it comes to external sector, we have achieved one of the highest record in our mercantile and services exports, our total exports. So our total exports in financial year 25 reached to $825.3 billion. The trade balance, see, though our exports is $825.3 billion, our imports are high. Since our imports are high, our trade balance will be negative. But that negative trade balance is being offset. It is being offset by the services as well as remittances. So in the basics class, I explained about balance of payment, current account, capital account. In the current account, we have the balance of trade, net invisibles. The balance of trade is nothing but the trade balance. The trade balance export has increased significantly, but still we have higher imports. So the trade balance is not favorable. But that unfavorableness is offset by the services and the remittances. Okay. Our remittances is very, very high. We are the world's largest remittance receiving country. More than FDI, our remittances, inward remittance is very high. So current account is still facing deficit. It is almost 0.8% of GDP in the first half of the financial year 26. Capital account, FDI inflow is growing. There is net outflow of foreign portfolio investments. So foreign portfolio investments is the foreigners, foreign institutions investing in Indian stock markets. Forget about incoming. lot of people from India, they are, who have invested, they are taking their money out. There is net outflow of the investments. Balance of payment as a whole for the first half of the financial year 25, balance of payment as a whole, that is current account plus capital account, in the first half of 25 is not favorable. We are facing a deficit, but at the end of the year we can manage it. Rupee, we know it is getting weakened day by day, and forex reserve, we have more than $700 billion of forex reserve, and that is sufficient to cover our imports for almost 11 months. Okay. Periodic labor force survey also I explained in a separate video. Unemployment rate is declining, labor force participation is stabilizing, poverty is reducing. World Bank, they have revised their poverty line definition. According to the latest poverty line definition, one who is not able to earn $3 per day will be considered extremely poor. As per this definition, in India, the extremely poor people have come to around 5.3%. Okay, so finally in the chapter 1, the growth outlook, what the survey says, that the growth will be moderated. There are risks like AI, artificial intelligence, that is going to improve development, growth, all fine, but that can deepen the inequality also. The developed countries, handful of countries, they are having hold on AI. So they are going to make huge benefit. Others, there can be a divide between the developed and the developing countries. That is a risk. This prolonged trade conflict is also not good for the entire world. For India, the survey says that, see, there is no immediate economic pressure. We have strong domestic factors because India's economic growth is not because of other countries, predominantly it is because of our private final consumption expenditure. So domestic factors are strong, macroeconomic fundamentals are strong. Overall, our risk is balanced, so we need not worry much. So for the financial year 2027, the economic survey projects the growth at almost 7%. Right? So this is regarding chapter 1. Now we will move on to the chapter 2. This is regarding the fiscal developments. So survey says that fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, primary deficit, everything is declining. We are able to see a significant fall in these indicators. When it comes to revenue performance, the revenue receipt, when you compare pre-pandemic, in the post-pandemic, we are able to see an improvement. Be it revenue receipt, be it gross tax revenue. Revenue receipt, when you compare with pre-pandemic, we are growing. Gross tax revenue, when you compare pre-pandemic, we are growing. Okay. If you take the specific taxes, if you take the share of direct tax, when you compare pre-pandemic, in the post-pandemic, there is a increase in contribution. Specifically, income tax, if you see, more number of people, they are filing taxes. In the year financial year 2022, 6.9 crore people were filing taxes. Now it has increased to 9.2 crores. So how, sir? How, sir, significantly more number of people are filing taxes? The reason which economic survey highlights is the interventions, nudge-based interventions taken by the tax officials. Nudge-based is not a coercive measure. Nudge-based means it is an approach adopted by the income tax department to influence the taxpayer behavior through timely information, gentle prompt. For example, I regularly get a message, be it direct taxes or indirect taxes. Hi Guna, have you filed it? It's time. Like, do not delay the time, do it on time. Or if you have forgotten, now we have given a special window. So they constantly keep reminding me through messages, through phone calls, through emails. Okay, this is called as nudging compliance that has shown an improvement in the number of people filing the taxes. Okay, with respect to GST also, the performance has improved. The gross GST collection between April to December 25 alone, it is almost 17.4 lakh crores. We are able to have almost 6.7% growth in the GST collections. And we all know that in the 56th GST Council meeting, which was held in 2025 September, where the number of tax rates has been brought down to 2. Previously, we had 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. Now it is only 5% and 18%. Okay, and for sin items, we have 40% for selective goods and services. Inverted duty structure also, I explained, economic survey basics video. I explained about inverted duty structure where the taxes on the input is more than the taxes on the output. Now, because of this, the GST payers, they are finding it difficult to get the input tax refunds. Okay, so this inverted duty structure problem was addressed in textiles, fertilizer sectors. So these are some performance which the survey is highlighting. When it comes to expenditure, the revenue expenditure, unproductive expenditure. Capital expenditure means it is going to either create the asset or it is going to reduce the liability. That is good for the government. But revenue expenditure, it is relatively unproductive, recurring. So this revenue expenditure, somehow it has to be rationalized. Paying salary you cannot reduce, but paying subsidies can be reduced. Paying interest cannot be reduced. For the borrowing you pay interest, that is revenue expenditure, you cannot reduce. But grants, random grants should not be given. So revenue expenditure has to be rationalized. So the survey is highlighting that the revenue expenditure in the financial year 2022 was 13.6% of GDP. Now in financial year 25, it has been reduced to 10.9%. The main reason is subsidy rationalization that was supported by direct benefit transfer. So when you have to reduce the subsidy, even the reduced subsidy, you go through direct benefit transfer, put the money into the account of the beneficiaries. Through this process, a lot of leakages, corruption is getting addressed, through which government is able to save almost 3.48 lakh crores in last decade. Right. With respect to capital expenditure, in the first chapter only we discussed. So, be it the capital expenditure, be it the effective capital expenditure, both are improving. That too, when compared to the pre-pandemic, we are able to see a significant jump in the capital as well as effective capital expenditure. So, you all know effective capital expenditure is nothing but capital expenditure plus the grants given to the states which resulted in assets. Okay. With respect to center-state money transfer, survey is highlighting that a significant amount of money is being shared from center to state. For example, financial year 20, almost 5.7% of GDP centers transferred it to state. It got increased to almost 6.9%. If you look in terms of numbers, it got doubled. In financial year 20, 11.5 lakh crores were shared from center to state. It has been increased to 25.6 lakh crores. With respect to state finances, the total fiscal deficit in the financial year 25 when compared to financial year 22, we are able to see an increase. The total fiscal deficit got increased to 3.2% and revenue deficit also increased. Revenue deficit is not good. Revenue deficit means the government is not earning sufficient money to meet their regular expenditure. When there is revenue deficit, that means government has to borrow to pay salary, government has to borrow to pay subsidy, government has to borrow to pay interest. That is not good. RD should be very low and FD also should be within the range. Okay, within 3% FD should be, but the gross fiscal deficit of all the states put together I am talking about, that is increased. Both FD as well as RD both has increased. That is not good. That has to be addressed. Okay, so what is the SASCI, Special Assistance to States for Capital Investment? Central government is giving 50-year interest-free loan for the state governments to invest in infrastructure. So 3.50 is equal to 3.2%. But if you remove the SASCI support, then the FD will become 2.8%. State government has to repay only. Under the SASCI, if some state government is borrowing, they have to repay. They need not pay interest, but they have to repay. Debt is a debt. But if you remove the SASCI, FD will come down to 2.8%. Okay. Then, with respect to the revenue composition of the states, almost 50% of the state's revenue is coming from their own tax revenue. Any states, if you take, almost, if they earn 100 rupees, 50 rupees is coming from their own taxes. Okay, the remaining money, sir, the remaining money will come from central government support, the state's non-tax revenue with which they manage. So this is something positive because when compared to the previous year, the state's own tax revenue share is increasing. With respect to unconditional cash transfer, state governments, they are giving money to the people without any conditions. Every month I might get 1000 rupees without any condition. That is unconditional transfer. This unconditional transfer alone in financial year 26, the unconditional transfer program alone is costing around 1.76 lakh crores. Now, whether it is correct, whether the state government can go for such unconditional transfer. For example, if you take Tamil Nadu government, in the election also, the ruling government as well as the opposition party and also an aspiring party to come to power, they all are promising that for all the eligible women beneficiaries, 2,000 to 2,500 rupees per month will be given. Now, this money is an unconditional transfer. There is nothing attached, there is no condition attached to it. Such unconditional transfer, whether it is good for the economy or not. See, so National Bureau of Economic Research has done a study. Almost 72 such programs under 34 low and middle income countries were studied. What is the achievement? So when people were given money unconditionally, their consumption has increased. So when you consume more, more demand, more production, more growth. When you have money, you will have it for ensuring food. So food security has improved. And to some extent, there is income stability. But what did not happen? Whether child nutrition, did it improve? No. Educational outcome? No. Whether people escape from poverty sustainably? No. Occasionally, some months they will escape, some months they are not able to escape. So, we are able to see an improvement, but that improvement is not sustainable, that is not long term. Okay, so a positive long-term outcome cannot be ensured through such unconditional transfer. Government should continue to focus on improving the health infrastructure, education, nutrition program, child care, employment opportunities. So at any point of time, such unconditional transfers cannot be a substitute for the ongoing government efforts. At the same time, a study was also done to study about conditional transfers. So Mexico, a model was studied, Philippines model was studied. In Mexico and Philippines, they have conditional transfer. What is it? For example, the beneficiaries will receive cash only if children go to school. Only when pregnant women and young children, they visit health clinics regularly. Okay, only when there's a condition attached. So government will give money, but provided you have to do something. Philippines. So here it is time bound. That means government will give benefits, but it is not unlimited, which is not never ending. Everything will have a sunset clause. So these models were also studied, and there is a positive outcome that is also mentioned in the survey. When it comes to the debt profile, okay, the central government debt now it stands at 55.7% of GDP. The central government debt, it increased, particularly during the COVID period, it increased, and it is moderated to 55.7%. If you take the general government, that is central government borrowing and the state government borrowing, that is coming around 81.1% of GDP. That is, if GDP is 100 lakh crores, central government alone is borrowing central government's debt alone is 55 lakh crores. And if you take central government as well as state government's borrowing, that comes around 81 lakh crores. Okay. So when you compare this debt scenario with the global scenario, so central government's debt is almost 55, the general government debt is almost 81%, right? So if you take the advanced economies, their debt is almost 110.2%. When you compare the America, when you compare the advanced economies, India's debt is almost 81%. But if you take the emerging economies, Brazil, South Africa, emerging economies, in that case, the average is 73, but we are more than 73%. So we have to focus on reducing that debt position. Okay. So what is the conclusion? With respect to central fiscal management, the central government, as per survey, they are focusing on growth. At the same time, they are consolidating the deficits. One side they are reducing revenue expenditure, one side they are reducing deficit, another side they are increasing capital expenditure, another side they are increasing effective capital expenditure. When it comes to the state's performance, Good thing is the state government's capital expenditure is increasing. The state government's own revenue, their net own tax revenue is increasing. But however, their deficits are also increasing. Fiscal deficit is also 3.2%. Revenue deficit is also there. So this has to be consolidated. This has to be addressed. So put it simply, fiscal matters, central government is performing well, state governments, there is a lot of room to improve. Right? So these are the assessments given in the chapter 1 and chapter 2. I hope you got clarity on the topics what we discussed. So I will see you in the next video. Till then, bye. Take care from Guna Mathivanan.